Hi Providence, my name is Maddie, and this week we are jumping into week 8 of the Bible reading plan. If you have made it these first 7 weeks, that is absolutely amazing. I don't know about you, but it's starting to feel like this habit and just this consistent rhythm in my life. And I think what attests to that is that we're doing it in a community. I don't know if you feel that same way, but reading it with my city group and with my friends, I think that's made all the difference. So praying you're feeling the same way. If you haven't even started, please just jump in with us this week. It's honestly never too late. So this week we're reading Numbers chapters 9 through 28 and Psalms 24 through 27. And I'm just going to kind of do a little overview of what we're going to be reading. And I'm going to give you guys 3 questions to just sift through and kind of meditate on this week as you're reading. So where we left off, God is giving the Israelites instructions at Mount Sinai basically on how to live. And where we jump in, actually, he's finishing up those instructions, and then they're finally heading to the promised land after 2 years. Sounds like forever, but sadly it's about to be even longer. So they depart from Mount Sinai. They're led by the cloud and by the fire, which just is crazy in itself, and they immediately start complaining again, sadly. And that displeased God and made him super angry with good reason, because he had just single-handedly delivered them from Egypt and slavery and oppression. And he's now leading them to the land flowing with milk and honey, and you would think that they would be happy and thankful, but they can't stop thinking about all the things that they don't have. So I read in a commentary, our complaining hearts displease God because it shows so little gratitude for what he has done in the past and little faith for what he can do right now and in the future. So the Israelites are complaining again. Specifically, they're craving meat. And even Moses starts to kind of doubt that God could give them meat. And God's response is the Lord's arm too short? And I think this reminds me that God never changes. He is almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing. He's sovereign. He is good. And I think it's my trust and my view of him that is constantly changing and shifting, unfortunately. But this reminds me that God doesn't change ever. So sure enough, for the next month, God gives them meat, almost sarcastically. He gives them quail. He's like, you're going to eat this meat for a month. So in my study Bible, it says, dissatisfaction comes when our attention shifts. My sweet child wants to get into the room, and hopefully my husband comes and takes him, so I don't have to start over. So my study Bible says, dissatisfaction comes when our attention shifts from what we have to what we don't have. So the Israelites' focus is constantly on everything that they don't have, causing them to forget all the insane ways that God has continuously been faithful to them so far. So question number 1 I have for you to reflect on this week: what areas or circumstances in your life are you continually complaining about that possibly God is wanting to do something through those areas and use, whether he's maybe using that area to change you, or maybe he's using you in that area and going to work through you for someone else? What would it look like for you to shift your focus to Christ in those areas rather than towards yourself and maybe keep complaining? So I want you to just meditate on that as you're reading this week. So chapter 13, Israelites have made it to the promised land. They're actually encamped out of the desert of Paran. I looked up how to say it and I already forgot. But God tells Moses to send in spies to check out the land, explore it, and report back. So Moses sends in 12 spies, 1 from each tribe. They go into the land, they explore it, they come back, they report that, yeah, it is flowing with milk and honey. Basically, yeah, this land is awesome, but the people are huge and powerful, and they honestly are scared. And it says that Caleb boldly stands up before the crowd, and it says that he silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. But the other spies were absolutely terrified, and they spread word all throughout the community that they shouldn't enter into the promised land that God had promised them. So chapter 14, community members not wanting to enter this promised land because of the negative report from most of the spies, and this fear and emotion just spread like wildfire throughout the community. So by this point, God is angry again, and Moses is pleading with God to not kill all the Israelites, reminding him of the covenant they made, and God graciously hears Moses, forgives the Israelites, and basically says that none of that current generation will see the promised land except for Caleb and Joshua. So he says that they're going to wander for 40 years until that generation is completely gone, and then he will have them go in the promised land. That's their consequence. That's their punishment. So a lot of rebellion and hardened hearts towards God happened during those 40 years. Again, the Israelites forgetting all that God had done for them. So question number 2, is the Lord asking you to step out in faith into a promised land? Maybe the obstacles and your doubts are keeping you from taking that step in faith, but God is wanting you to put your trust fully in him. So finally, a new generation has come, and lo and behold, they are complaining again. They don't have water. I probably would have complained too. And like they talked about in a sermon last week, it wasn't that asking for water was bad. It was their heart posture behind it. So Moses and Aaron bring this request before the Lord for the water, and God gives Moses exact instructions to gather the community and to speak to the rock to have water come from this rock. So Moses gathers the people, and he's honestly pretty frustrated, and he rebukes them, and then he hits the rock twice to have water come out of it. And God is angry at Moses because he didn't follow his instructions exactly. And God says that Moses is now forbidden to enter in the promised land too. And I think whenever I read this, my initial heart response is like, whoa, God, like, that's a little bit harsh. Like, this guy has been your faithful follower and leader for over 40 years, and just like that, he can't get into the promised land. But I think I'm reminded and humbled on how important it is to obey God fully and not just partially. So how often am I like, oh, I'm mostly following God's words or nudges in my life, but just following his commands partially is actually disobedience, and it has its consequences just like it did Moses. But I think one cool thing to notice is that Moses' attitude, even after God says, yeah, you're not going to see the promised land, Moses' attitude and his willingness to lead the Israelites still so faithfully, because Moses had one desire, and that was to be in the presence of the Lord and to serve him faithfully. So I think that we can totally learn from Moses. It was not about Moses at all, or what legacy Moses was going to lead, bringing the Israelites into the promised land, but it was all about faithfully serving Christ God however he needed him to. So that leads me to the last question. Question number 3, is there an area in your life that you aren't obeying God fully? An area you maybe are partially obeying, but he's calling you to full obedience. So then jumping into the Psalms, these 4 Psalms this week, they remind me of who is in control. Psalm 27 is actually my favorite Psalm ever, and it is continually reminding me that I have nothing to fear in this world, absolutely nothing, because my God is completely in control. So yeah, I hope these questions are helpful for you as you meditate and reflect on them this week as you're reading. And yeah, gosh, I know that the Lord is going to reveal himself to you through the scriptures this week, and I can't wait to see what he shows you. So have a great week, and yeah, keep plugging along.